Hi, welcome to the Chess Wolf website. If you're looking at this, you're an intermediate student. You already know the basics. So the title of the video is Pins, but we're going to talk about other things as we go, other things that you should know about how to get the game going, what you want to try and do when you move your pieces. So let's just start. I was going to say something else, but let's just get started. So I'm playing white. I play e4 here. So if you don't know board coordinates, go take a look go into the beginner section and look at the video called The Board, and it'll explain the coordinates. I'm on e4. So you should be able to use board coordinates by now. If you can't, then go back and look at that video. So black plays e6. Now I kind of think that I would have played a different move. I would have played e5, or I would have played something else, so that I had a piece actually on one of the center squares. So I opened up and I'm trying to control the center. When I say, I made my first move, I put a pawn right in the middle of the board. And it's sitting there in the middle of the board, and it's also putting pressure on one of the central squares. Now black is putting pressure on a central square, but black is not occupying any of the center squares. So that's why I think that this kind of a move, unless black has a plan, is probably not aggressive enough. Black usually is better off to just play e5, unless black is going to play, has got a plan. All right. So let's just keep going. I don't want to dwell on that too long. So I just get some more of the center. Now I've got two pawns sitting in the center. They're pointing at squares on the other side. The four central squares, I'm either sitting on them or I'm putting pressure on them. Black develops again, pulls up a little bit short here in my opinion. I think maybe pawn to d5 is a little bit stronger move, because it's challenging white for control of the center. This pawn is putting pressure on the d5 square, the e5 square. Black's got pressure on the d5 square as well from the other pawn, but black isn't really challenging either one of white's pawns here in the middle. So I think it's just better to just go to war right away for the center. You have to fight hard for the center. So I'm just pulling out a knight here. I'm going to protect this d4 pawn, and there's no threats against it right now, but I know there could be later. I'm just trying to put more pieces, like either pointing at the center or sitting right in the center, and I'm also putting pressure on this e5 square. So now I have two pieces putting pressure on the e5 square, right? And I've got multiple pieces on the d4 square, so just building up force against the center squares and trying to put pieces on the center squares. Now black has an idea here by pulling up this b6 pawn, plays pawn to b6. If you didn't see it, he just made this move. Black wants to bring the bishop to here, and then from there that bishop will have, what should I say, be putting pressure against the center from the side of the board. And this is legitimate. There are legitimate uses for that. I'm not sure if that's the best thing here, but it's possible. I don't really know yet, because I don't know how good black is going to play. So I just keep going. I just keep developing. So I know that black may be coming to here, putting pressure on here. I bring my knight to c3. So my knight now is protecting that pawn. And it's also putting pressure on the d5 square, more pressure on the central squares. So let's see what black does next. Let me just delete these arrows. So black's next move is what I expected, b7, or bishop to b7. So now I have some choices to make here, but I decide I want to fight for this this d5 square a little bit. So I move my I make this move, bishop to c4. That gets my bishop out of the way so that my king is clear to get to safety, and I can bring my rook out at the same time by castling. Also, my bishop is putting pressure on this d5 square. So now I've got 3 pieces on this d5 square, and I'm starting to build up, I'm starting to build up pressure directly against black's pieces. Can't really do anything to black right now. I'm just building up pressure, building up pressure. It's all about just pressure, pressure, pressure against the center. So let's see what black does. Black pulls out a knight, moves knight to e7. So black sees that, I've got a bunch of pressure piled up against this d5 square. Black has now got a little bit of pressure against the d5 square as well. So it looks like black is expecting a fight here. Now, maybe black is expecting that I want to play d5. I do, but I want to do something before I do that, and that is I want to get my king to safety. So I get my king to safety because I want to open up the center here, and you'll see that happen in a minute. But black has done something here. Black has not developed his pieces. Things are like in each other's way, and the king's stuck in the middle. And when you see that, when you got a bunch of pieces out on the board and the other black doesn't have as many pieces as well positioned as you do, and you can get a rook out. Maybe I want to bring a rook to e1. If you can get in a situation like this, then what you want to do is you want to try and blast a hole in the center and come down the middle of the board and go after the king. So that's why I castled. So black tries to beat me to it here by playing d5, but I wanted to open the center anyway, so I just take it. Black takes back. I'm not quite ready yet. I can't really. It wouldn't do me any good to move here because black can just block me a couple of different ways. Actually, yeah. See, he's got a lot of pressure on that square there, so there's different ways that black could block me. That would be a waste of a move. And again, I don't want to move the same piece twice. We're trying to get our pieces out. So I just move my piece back to b3. I'm keeping the pressure up. Sorry, pointed to the wrong piece. Keeping the pressure up. So black tries to get another piece into play. Now, again, trying to put a little bit of pressure on the center, trying to get his pieces off the back row there. It's also putting some pressure on the square. So he's trying, but it's, white's got kind of a lead in development here. So rook to e1 now. So we called I play rook to e1, and this comes up a lot in games like this, where if the black king gets stuck in the middle, I like to bring this rook out to put pressure down this e-file against the king. So here I'm pinning the knight. Remember the video is called pins? Here's the first pin. There will be other pins, but this is an absolute pin. That knight cannot move because it's illegal to put your king in danger. That knight's stuck. So now what I want to try and do is start to attack that knight if I can. So that's my plan. So let's see what black's going to do. So black wants to get this bishop off this back rank so that it's clear for the king to castle. Black wants to get out of the way here. Okay. Black also, by putting that bishop there, is trying to put additional pressure against the center from the side of the board. So that's what I think black's plan is. So I play bishop to g5, and again, I'm just trying to develop with a threat. I want to bring my pieces out, and I try to do it with a threat. I try to force black to do something. It's because if I can bring a piece out and force black to make some move to respond to my threat, then it gains time for me. And we'll talk about time in a later video. But I've gained a lot of time already because of all those pawn moves that black made earlier on. So I expected black to block this. So black blocks, and I'm happy to pull my bishop back. So, oops, excuse me. Sorry about that. I pull my bishop back to h4, and again, now black can come up and threat my bishop, and then I can pull my bishop to here to g3, and then it has pressure down, actually pressure against this down this whole diagonal here. So that's my plan if black advances that pawn. So I'm kind of expecting that that's what black's going to do, but black does me a favor, and black's afraid of this pin against the knight. So black is trying like crazy. I've got multiple threats going on here. Black's trying to get this king out of the way. So this gives me a little more time, right? So then I play knight takes d5. So now again, we were fighting for this d5 square, and it looks like I'm going to win the fight, because this knight on e7 here can't take my knight because he's pinned, right? So black doesn't, I'm threatening knight takes knight. Queen cannot take the knight back, because then I'll take the queen with my rook, and black will have lost a queen for a knight and a rook, and that's a better, if you know anything about piece values, that gives me an advantage. So black doesn't want to take that trade. So black gets rid of my knight, and so then I trade back. Black still can't take me because black is still pinned, right? So see, the pin's just being used as a way to kind of keep black cramped up, tied up. I'm also putting a threat on this rook. So I took a central square for my bishop, developing toward the center. I've occupied a central square, and I've done it with a threat. So I'm forcing black to make kind of a needless move. He would like to have made a stronger move with this rook, but he's going to have to move out of the way. He can't move this pawn to c6, because I'll just take it, and then it puts a pin on the d knight against the king. So, and why could I take it if he did that? Why can't he just take my bishop if I play bishop takes pawn? Again, see this pin, this darn pin. So it didn't look like much in the beginning when I put the rook there, because there's so much stuff on that file, but you can see how it's starting to have an effect. So black's got to move the rook. Black moves the rook. Then I play bishop to c6. So I figure, what the heck? I've still got a pin on this knight, right? He can't take my bishop with his knight. I'm just going to harass the other knight now. I've got an absolute pin on the d7 knight. Black tries to get out of the way here. So now I no longer have the pin on the e7 knight, and now black's threatening to take my bishop. So I'd say, okay, fine. I'll just back up here, and again, I'm just keeping pressure at this point. I'm waiting to see what black's going to do. I'm keeping up the pressure, and I've got, stuff coming down the middle. I've got stuff coming in from the sides. So black's in a tight spot. So black, I'm surprised black just played c5. I would think black would have tried to do something, I don't know, to get out of this mess. Black's actually doing me a favor here. Maybe thinks that I'm going to play pawn takes pawn, but I don't do that. Black just gave me a passed pawn. Remember, pawns can promote and become a more powerful piece. So, if you can get a pawn passed, now black has got to defend from this pawn making it to the d8 square. It doesn't look like much of a threat right now, but believe me, as these pawns get closer to the back rank, they become more and more trouble, and you'll see in a second what I mean by that. So black plays knight to e5. Now the reason black did that is because black wants to put pressure against this pawn. It's got two pieces against my my d5 pawn, and I've only got one piece defending it. So black's threatening to take that pawn now. So I just take the knight, And now if black plays knight takes pawn, I'm headed for this square, c6. And what happens from there? If I get my knight to there, that knight has a threat against the queen and the rook. They're both worth, either one of them is worth more than this knight. So one of them will have to move if my knight gets to that square, and as soon as it moves, I'm taking whichever one is left. So again, I'm just getting further and further ahead on material if black takes this pawn. So black can't take the pawn. Black's forced to capture my knight. Now, I'm not sure what I would have done in black's situation, but black sees the fork there, so black takes my knight. Now remember I said way back that, you know, I wanted to keep this pressure right here, even though that pawn was in the way, because sometimes things force things to move around and things open up that weren't there before. Well, that's what's happened here. Now I've got a pin. Again, the video is called pins. I've got a pin against the queen. Now this is not an absolute pin. It's what you might call a relative pin. It's legal for black to move that knight, but if black moves the knight, black's going to lose a queen for a bishop. That's not a very good trade. So now I've got a pin against that knight. I simply advance my pawn to d6, and now I'm threatening. I'm going to take this knight. I've got a pressure on the square from there and pressure from here. Actually, what I'm going to do next, if black doesn't do something, is I'm going to play bishop takes knight. If I play bishop takes knight, if that king and that queen are still sitting there, then I have a fork against the king and the queen with a check, right? Check on the king. King's got to move, or the queen's got to take the bishop. Queen takes the bishop, pawn takes the queen. So black's going to end up down material here. So at this point, black gave up. So that's, I know that was a lot in a short period of time. You might want to rewatch this video. I called it pins, but as you can see, there are a lot of things that we talk about in class. You could see them in action here. But the thing that really kind of finally broke black's spirits here was this final the pin and the threat to take that knight. So thanks for watching, and I'll keep putting games up here in the intermediate section that demonstrate strategies and tactics for intermediate players. See you next time. Bye.